Not familiar with Hudsonia, it is a small nonprofit, non-advocacy environmental research institute. We're based in Red Hook, and we work all over the Hudson Valley. We study the plants and animals and natural landscapes, their ecology and conservation. And one thing we make a big effort to do is to take the results of our research and the research of other biologists and ecologists in the region and put that information into the hands of people like yourselves who can put it to the best use. Landowners, developers, town agencies who are engaged in land use planning and decision making. And that's the main reason why we do these kinds of projects, this kind of habitat mapping project that was initiated by the Hyde Park CAC. With me here tonight is Nava Tabak, sitting here in the front row. She's another of the Hudsonia biologists. Nava has worked on several of these large habitat mapping projects in Dutchess County, and she had a big hand in a part of this project. She did most of the proofreading of the habitat map toward the end of this work. I guess, yeah, the next slide. This is part of a larger habitat mapping program that Hudsonia has been carrying out since the early 2000s, since 2001. This map shows in dark green, the solid green areas, all the towns where we have completed, in most cases, town-wide habitat mapping projects. You can see the northern part of Hyde Park there, right there. That's the subject of my talk tonight. And these blue striped areas in these 6 towns in the southern part of the county are areas where we have completed recently a habitat mapping project, especially for Blanding's turtle habitat complexes. Blanding's turtle is a threatened species. In Dover is the town that we're mapping right now. We're in the middle of that project, and we're still looking for funding to complete that project. Next slide. I guess we'll go right on to the next slide. In these projects, we are identifying what we call ecologically significant habitats, and we mean several different things by that term. We're certainly talking about rare or declining habitats, and also habitats that are known to support rare or declining species. But we're also talking about high-quality examples of very common habitats like upland hardwood forests and upland meadows and other kinds of places which make up most of the landscape out there and are very important to just about everything that's going on ecologically in the region. We're also very concerned about complexes of connected habitats, and it's these larger sort of landscape connections that we believe are one of the most important aspects of habitat conservation and conservation of wildlife and native plants. This map shows the study area for the project. This is the northern, approximately northern third of the town, bounded on the south by South Cross Road and Falkhill Road over here, and reaching all the way to the river on the west and the Clinton border on the east. This is the area that Emily pointed out as the study area for the Biodiversity Assessment Training Group. Volunteers in the town of Hyde Park who have also produced a map of ecologically significant habitats. They'll be presenting that work to the town sometime soon this year. We conduct these projects first by doing a lot of remote sensing. We look at topographic maps, soils maps, geology maps, aerial photos to predict where certain kinds of habitats are likely to occur in the landscape. Then we create a preliminary habitat map that we draw using GIS software onto an aerial photo image. And then we go out in the field and do lots and lots of field work to try to verify and correct our preliminary map. And we end up creating a map like this. This actually here on my right is the complete map. Projected here is a close-up of that map. Each of these colored labeled polygons is a different habitat type, labeled with things like HS for hardwood swamp, UMF for upland mixed forest, IWP for intermittent woodland pool, and so forth. In addition to this habitat map, we also have created a report, quite an extensive report, that gives lots of descriptions of the kinds of habitats we've found, explains their ecological significance, the kinds of rare species that we know occur or may occur in those habitats, and lots of conservation recommendations, some of them very specific to particular species occurring in those habitats, and some of them more general for the habitat in general. You can move on. These are lists of the habitats that we identified in this project. I believe it's about 30 habitats in all, including 6 or 7 of the tidal and shoreline habitats along the Hudson River. Many of these, as you see, are fairly common habitat types, like upland hardwood forest and marshes. But some of them are less familiar to you, and I'll talk about very briefly about a couple of those. I am going to make this talk very brief so we have plenty of time for the other presenters tonight, and I hope to answer a lot of your questions later on, either in the Q&A session or afterwards while we're drinking coffee. I do want to say before going any further that most of the work on this project was conducted by another Hudsonia colleague, Kristen Bell. She is now living in North Carolina, although she's still a Hudsonia employee working half-time for us. She couldn't be here tonight, but she deserves practically all the credit for the work on this project. Much of the landscape that we mapped was covered by various kinds of upland forests, hardwood forests, conifer forests, mixed forests. It won't be news to you that forests of all kinds are very important for wildlife habitat. Large forest areas in particular have special importance for some of our wildlife species that seem to be disappearing from this part of the landscape. By this part, I mean the Hudson Valley in general. There are quite a few species of wildlife that seem to require landscapes with large forested areas. Some of these species actually seem to need the deep interior parts of forests in order to reproduce successfully, raise their young, and sustain populations in the long term. For that reason, we pay special attention to large forested areas, although we consider forested areas of practically any size to be of real significance. Forests are, in addition to their wildlife habitat values, have tremendous importance for the maintaining our water resources, both our